Hola, hola, Caracola. Hi, Patreons. How you doing? How we been? This week, I'm bringing you a story about Jill Dando that I kind of always wanted to cover just to go into it, research, do my knowledge, expand my horizons, know everything about the story, as you do when you want to. And this podcast is really helping me do that because I'm doing so many fucking cases for Patreon or otherwise. Especially with these two mini things, legends, stuff like on the main episodes now. So I'm like every week learning new shit and I fucking love it. So, a lot of you might actually, especially if British, know of a case of Jill Dando, have your own theories. If you are clueless, this might be a great way to start. And, if you have your theories, let's see if they match the ones I found on the internet, like the most popular ones. Let's just dive in. In April 1999, BBC journalist Jill Dando was gunned down in front of her flat by an unknown assailant. 21 years after her death, we still don't know who killed her. How has her life contributed to the possible motives behind her death? This is her story. So, we're gonna start off with the murder. Around that time, Jill Dando was dating a guy, so she has spent the night before the April 26, 1999. She spent the night in his apartment in Chiswick, and, she just went home the next day, and she was just about to, approach her door to open it when an unknown assailant just pushed her to the ground, pressed the gun to her head and shot. And nobody in the neighborhood even heard the shot, so whether it was silencer or the gun was just too close to her head, basically nobody heard the shot and nobody has actually seen what happened until about 15 minutes when somebody found her. And the neighbor has found her, approached her, and then called 999. Some of this material is from the video by Kendall Ray, and she plays the 999 call, and it is the most British 999 call I have ever heard in my fucking life. Because this woman says confidentially, she's sort of panicking, says hey, somebody's died. She says confidentially, I think it's Jill Dando. It's just the most polite fucking way. It's confidential, don't tell anybody, don't release this, listen, between you and me. This is the only spark of this story, okay? I take what I get. So they transport her to the hospital. She's declared dead at 37 years old. Now they're obviously trying to figure this out, and the main thing that they do or can do is get eyewitness testimonies, interview anybody who would have any leads before this case goes cold. So they have this witness that said he heard her scream, but in a happy way, she was happy that somebody was approaching her, so as in sort of speculating whether it is somebody that she has known. And he says this was a 6-foot white male around the age of 40. Now, nothing really comes out of this lead because, again, her boyfriend was in Chiswick. Who was this guy? If she was dating somebody else, this never came to light. So within the 6 months, they actually interviewed more than 2,500 people. And as during this time, she was working for BBC, but her main thing during this time was Crime Watch, which, again, if you've ever watched Crime Watch, well, it covers criminals, victims, criminals' families, a lot of different cases, so of course somebody there might have known something, or somebody might have had something against her because of the way she covered their case, etc. So they also looked into 30 different people she covered on Crime Watch, but then they discarded this theory that it's anybody connected to this. Now, when I was listening to this, I was okay, but hello, crime scene? What happened with the bullet? Casings? What gun was used? Why is this not the first thing I'm hearing about? Well, because this was apparently not the most solid, significant lead, even though it led somewhere and you hear what. But basically, bullet had apparently had some of the gunpowder taken out of it. Again, that would have made it quieter. So it wasn't even the silencer. It was the fact, I have no idea about bullets and all of this shit, but apparently if you take some gunpowder out of the bullet somehow and then screw it back together, it makes the gunshots quieter. But then again, is there no more risk of actually killing a person? They never developed on this. This is the only thing I could find out there. And before going to her flat, she stops at an off license, so there is CCTV footage, and it just shows nobody's stalking her. So it's not some fan or delusional person that is just going around stalking her, waiting her to get home. Now, honestly, this is pretty much it, what they have for evidence. So that one witness witnessing somebody approach her like minutes before the murder, and then just like that bullet information. That is as sad as it is, pretty much it. And then the rest of it is theories. So let's go on to them. So the most plausible theory, and the theory that actually led to an arrest, like a wrongful fucking conviction, which I just find so bizarre in this case, is that among those tips and among those people that they interviewed, a tip came in for a guy named Barry George, who worked as the messenger at BBC. Now, when you look at certain things, you can kind of maybe see like how they connected, like, okay, this is the guy. But there was so much reasonable doubt left. There is just nothing concrete connecting this guy to Jill Dando and the murder. I just don't fucking understand. He lived half a mile from her house, okay? When you hear that, you're like, maybe that is like suspiciously close, okay? Had a history of stalking women. Not great for you, Barry, but again, we kind of established that this was not a stalker. He was denied becoming police officer, so he pretended he was. Okay, 2 red flags. As we know, a lot of criminals kind of try to either get into police or military, and then pretending he was, yeah, that is a red flag in itself. I'm not saying this guy shouldn't have like either served time or, being convicted in any way, but not for this fucking case to this extent. And the most damning for the police was that they found undeveloped films. Put remember those? Like in my family, we actually used to just like, in order to basically max out the fucking film so that they can develop it at the shop. Because you couldn't just bring, I don't know, back home you actually couldn't. I don't know if in every part of the world this is the case. Yeah, please let me know. Basically, back home, until you used up all of the pictures on the freaking camera, you couldn't actually bring it to the shop to develop it. This might be more to do with cameras and technology than people actually saying no. So, yeah, probably sounds stupid as fuck, but hey. They developed his films, and he had images of women, license plates, and the weird one of himself like wearing a mask and holding a gun. He also had pictures of Jill Dando like cut out. So it's like just her and everybody else kind of in the pictures is cut out. And now, what was apparently damning in this case is he had some gunshot residue on his coat, like inside of the coat pocket. So they make an arrest. They convict him, but the public was concerned from the get-go, as the only evidence was just like particle of this gun dust, which is not enough. And also, the defense was saying from the beginning that this could have been in that coat from like any point. It's just like gun dust. It could have been like somebody else touching the gun wearing the coat. There was no like DNA of hers or anything connecting it to that like gun dust. And this is so sad. I fucking hate this defense. But like, I know it works, but like, I just hate it. So basically, he was released after 7 years. And like, the media just shattered him to pieces. And he was released because the defense managed to prove that he was actually not intelligent enough to commit a crime. Apparently, he had like intelligence, like IQ of 70 something. Something like that. But I just hate this fucking defense, because it's like, no, he's innocent. Why are you ruining somebody else's like image? And like, he's probably not gonna be able to fucking find jobs anyway. Why are you ruining any chance of that? And now the best thing that has happened in this case is that in December 2009, because The Sun, so the news group newspapers, was fucking him over so much in the fucking news, he actually this time accepted substantial amount of money for the damages that they have done to him, following a libel action in the High Court. I couldn't find how much he actually got from The Sun, but fuck yeah, good for him. Because The Sun is just the cruelest fucking piece of shit. It's not even worthy to wipe your ass with. Now, everybody's favorite theory, the theory of the Serbian hitman. Okay, as you know, I am from Serbia, but I'm gonna try and give you the unbiased account of this, because just this is like on top of the list. Wikipedia actually doesn't develop any other theory but this one. Like, somebody really had it out for us, guys. And it is just so far-fetched. I was just like reading this and like not understanding fully how they made these connections, but hey, I'm gonna read it and explain it to you, okay? A bit of context. So this was 1999. This is when I was 7, and in Serbia, what was going on was the Kosovo War. I literally spent like months in the fucking basement because they were bombing the shit out of us, okay? So, of course, a lot of Serbs are not going to have the most blissful image of the Allies, so of NATO, and UK and the US and what they have done to us. Not justifying it, but just saying that nationalists will kind of still to this day hate like the foreigners for doing this basically, and like providing help in this allied war, because well, like everything was fucking ruined. They bombed us, like it was war and it was traumatic as fuck. NATO forces bombed the radio television of Serbia, which is our biggest TV station, well, today as well. This was in Belgrade only 3 days before Jill Dando was killed. Now, this whole theory is based that it is because 16 employees of Radio Television of Serbia were killed, that Dando was killed in retribution for these deaths. So it's like journalist for a journalist, eye for an eye kind of justice. So apparently only a few weeks earlier during this war, Dando actually fronted the BBC appeal for aid for the Kosovan Albanian refugees fleeing ethnic cleansing in the Balkans. And it's speculated this could have brought the attention of the Serb leaders. And this was apparently backed up by two events. One was the call that BBC's head of news then, called Tony Hall, received, which was a death threat by a person who said they were Serbian activists and declared that he had killed Dando and that Hall would be next. And the second was that an opposition journalist who was Croatian, Slavko Čuruvija, was killed, like was assassinated actually, so to say it's the same way, in front of his home in Belgrade. And his wife, then widow, sort of said like she sees the similarities of the assassinations and she thinks that they were both executed and there is a link there. So what goes into their favor, let's say, is that usually these attacks are deployed in front of people's houses, in front of targets' houses, just because then they're most vulnerable and there is no case of mistaken identity because it is their house, they're going almost inside. And apparently that a bullet casing discovered at the scene showed signs of crimping, which is similar to markings on Yugoslav ammunition. I mean, let me know what you think about this theory. I obviously might be biased, but I also kind of see it as very far-fetched. Also, the police dropped it, and I mean, if anything, at that time, like, this was wartime, like, they didn't like us, like, they fucking contributed to this war, literally. NATO bombed the fucking half of Belgrade, which, like, some of the buildings are still in that fucking state today. So, if at any point they wouldn't have dropped this particular theory, this was then. What, somebody came in from Serbia, like, with the ammunition, how would that have worked? Like, what method of transport would they have come by? Like, this is just slightly far-fetched because it's like a day's difference between the murders of Radio Television Serbia and then the BBC journalists. So, like, how would they have just, like, plotted this plan? Who would, like, sent a hitman to London, found her address as well? Like, we don't have that much power back home to just find somebody's address in London in what, a nick of time. So for me, it is slightly far-fetched, but yeah, I'll let you think what you want about this theory. The next sort of, well, plausible / one of the biggest, most popular theories is that it is a gang killing. The gang killing theory is kind of like, it was the defense team's declaration as well, that her killing was a highly efficient hit. So they believe this person might have had something to do with the gang because of the muffled sound of the gun, the clean escape, like in broad daylight, this was like morning, and the single shot that was just effectively used to kill her. So an investigative journalist, William Thomas, actually said, investigating this case himself, that he believed Dando was killed by a professional on the orders of the London-based mob boss called Mr. Big, and that this was a direct bloody message to others. It was supposed to say, do not take on organized crime. Now, this again is kind of like a one-man story. It's not like wildly speculated or accepted theory, except that most people do agree with the first part of it, me included, that it was a professional hit. So it was just like somebody killing a person within a couple of minutes with a single bullet, knowing exactly what they're doing and not being spotted in broad daylight. And the last theory, which probably in the UK people hate, or people working for the BBC hate, but like I've seen so many comments on this video of Kendall Ray covering this case that I was just like, I cannot neglect this one. I mean, it is also out there as well. So it is that she was about to expose Jimmy Savile. If you remember, Jimmy Savile has been exposed as a pedophile. So she was apparently onto this like huge pedophile ring that involves celebrities, high-ranking police, judges, like members of the royal family. And apparently this theory is the BBC knew what she was onto, and because BBC is corrupt, that they made a hit on one of their own. So there's this whole theory that she was investigating this ring and then handed a dossier like containing her findings to the BBC management, and that the BBC killed her to shut her up. So obviously the BBC said it has seen no evidence to support this claim, and they were like, yep, shove it under the rug. So those are the most common / most popular theories on this case. Let me know what you guys think. Now let's go on to her background and see sort of where Jill Dando's career was when she was murdered. Jill was born into this family of journalists, okay, so this is like a classic great progression career where you're just born in like a family which loves and adores this profession, and then you just strive to be one of them as well. So she was born in 1961, she was the daughter of Jack Dando and Winifred Mary Jane Dando. So her brother worked as a journalist for BBC Radio Bristol, and she will sort of follow his footsteps and follow a career in journalism. Unlike me, where I would just like said goodbye to the university and said goodbye to that degree. It's like, I don't really want to work in the newsroom. Sorry guys, I've felt it on my skin for a couple of years and I don't want anything to do with it. But yeah, not Jill. Jill was like, this is my shit. So she started as a trainee reporter for the local weekly newspaper Western Mercury, where her dad and brother worked. And after 5 years, she started to work for the BBC. So she worked mostly as a newsreader for loads of like radio and TV news segments. And in 1988, she moved from the regional to national television in London to present BBC television news. So news bulletins that were airing on BBC One and BBC Two. And then she moved on to Crime Watch. So she was really like at the prime of her career. And it's like everybody, I think like every journalist dreams. And she was only sort of starting to yield the fruits of her freaking career, because obviously like she worked her ass off for like 5+ years to like then again work constantly, get where she was. So she only basically kind of like enjoyed the lifestyle and everything for only a couple of years. And in terms of her personal life, she dated like a BBC executive, so for like 7 years. Then she dated a national park warden, and basically in December 1997, she met gynecologist Ellen Farding like on a blind date that was just like set up by a mutual friend of theirs. And they announced their engagement in the January of 1999, so their wedding was actually set to take place on 25th of September that year. So at the time of her death, Dando was among the highest ranking profile of BBC's on-screen staff, and just like think for a second, being a woman as well at that period of time. She had been 1997 BBC Personality of the Year, and even Crime Watch reconstructed her murder in an attempt to aid the police to like look for the killer and solve the case. But the case still remains unsolved, so let me know what theory you believe. Do you have one of your own? Let's discuss the motive, because basically we'll kind of explain the theory that I have as well. In terms of motive, I put shutting her up, so like definitely in my mind this is not a personal crime. It's just somebody doing it like very matter of fact, like hitman style. There's no emotion for it to be somebody that knew her personally or just like even a stalker kind of theory. And I'm not a profiler at all. This is why I don't understand why the guy had to serve for 7 years for this shit, when clearly that guy was, well, a stalker. So like he had to have a personal motive to do something like this for it to escalate, and he clearly didn't. Now, whether it's shutting her up about like exposing something or about talking about the particular criminal, well, that again we can just speculate on. I don't think it is BBC personally. Neither do I think it is a Serbian hitman. It's like I see them digging in like all the wrong directions. Like as you can see, certain theories have just not been as explored as the others. It's like, why is there no evidence to what came out of these people that they have investigated that she covered on Crime Watch? Or like their associates that are out and that could have easily done this. But again, how did the person know exactly where she lived? That is my big one. So it is somebody who either has done this for a living, so does it professionally and knows easily how to track somebody down without making it personal, or it is somebody that either worked with her or knows her from one of those workplaces. It is most definitely related to somewhere where she works for, whether it is BBC, Crime Watch, whichever of these channels, because otherwise, like, that's the one thing where I always come back to. How the fuck did I know where she lived? So that's it from me for this minisode this week. The sources have been Wikipedia, Candleray channel, and crimeinvestigation.co.uk. Thank you, patrons, for your love and support. I will be with you next week, and until then, keep making the world a better place, one motive at a time. Bye!